Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Harris, Director of Marketing at Select, and thank you for joining today. Welcome to our next webcast in our continuing Predictive Analytics demo series. If you've been to a few of these already, we've held them over the past few months, and this is just a continuation of that. So thanks for joining. I should also note I'm joined, as always, by Carrie Beaulieu, Director of Product Management at Select. So like I said before, this is a regular series. We are going to keep doing these into the new year, so I hope everyone comes back as we start doing some different takes on predictive analytics for retail when it comes to merchandising and allocation and optimization in those areas. So we have a lot to say in that, and this one will be specifically about how to optimize assortments across your stores. So that said, let's just cover a few housekeeping items. And before I proceed with that, if you have any questions at all, just throw them out there in the question section. Do my best to answer them as we go. And these housekeeping items you have to go through are necessary, and we will do them right now. All lines are on mute. This will be recorded, and it will be available for replay in the next, I'd say the next day or two. And as I said before, questions can be submitted anytime through the Q&A panel. Excellent. So why don't we get rolling here? We're going to spend about 10 minutes sort of introducing everything so everyone's on the same page. And maybe another 10 minutes or so, Carrie will take us through a demo of the assortment optimization solution. And then from there, we can take a few more minutes to answer any questions that come up. So we hope to keep this within 30 minutes for you, because I know you have plenty of other things to do at the moment. So let's go over some basics first. Select's purpose. So who are we? Why are we here? What are we doing? So what we do is we offer a cloud-based predictive analytics platform. And what this does is it allows retailers to understand how individual customers shopping in stores or online choose from an assortment of products. And the cool thing about this is that it helps retailers simplify the complexity related to inventories and product assortment optimization in stores. So we have some customers that are taking advantage of this technology, and this will obviously grow over the next year. But currently we have Urban Outfitters, Zipcar, Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, a whole bunch of them. So I'd say go to our website to check those out. If you have any questions, just let us know. And they each have their own interesting assortment challenges too. So this will, what we go through today, will kind of lay some of those challenges out, why they exist, and we'll go through a demo to kind of show how we solve some of those challenges. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention, our underlying technology, which is very transparent to everybody, but it's what drives all of the analytics and essentially our entire platform. It's part of the top 50 greatest innovations to come out of MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab, alongside things like the digital computer, robotics, and email, those types of staple items that much of which we take for granted today. But a lot of that technology has come out of the MIT AI lab. So it's in the news. All this is in the news right now. Predictive analytics is in the news. But for retailers, this is the year. 2016 has been the year that it got noticed. It's been around before in other ways for retailers, in marketing purposes, for example. I'm sure everyone's been using some form of predictive analytics and machine learning for e-commerce marketing offerings. This year it's gotten a lot more recognition when applied to merchandising applications alongside planning solutions, for example. So there's plenty of articles out there, plenty of analyst coverage out there. It's getting to the point of saturation. We don't expect that to change into next year. But why is it? Why is it in the news? Well, it's in the news because shoppers have changed. Their habits have changed. Their buying patterns have changed. They expect a lot more than they used to, even just a few years ago. And they expect everything. They expect everything everywhere all the time. And that's just a fact. Nothing can change about that. And the trick is that retailers that recognize this, retailers that recognize what you see on the screen right now, are seeing success. So you might see articles over on some of the publications like Retail Dive and e-commerce Times, all these places that publish articles every day. And if you track what they're writing, a lot of it is around some of these retailers that have seen this and they've made changes and they're doing really neat things. whether it's Wayfair, Walmart, Amazon. They're using technologies to move with shopper expectations. So let's cover a somewhat simple example. Actually, this is a really simple example. This is a luxury department store, one that we've all heard of. I'm not going to say the name, but you'll probably have a rough idea of who it is. I want to give you an idea of the complexity, the level at which we operate when it comes to some of our customers and some of our prospects, and the amount of inventory and the amount of financial capital they're putting forth every year when it comes to allocating product to their stores. So in this example, we have about, say, around $650 million annually spent on shoes, and that's across styles, right? That's across SKU types, colors, sizes, not to mention all sorts of other items in their stores, but let's just stick with shoes. And there's about 100,000 shoe types. And not to mention 52 or so stores, and each store has a finite amount of room, right? So we're talking now about store space, floor space. What are you going to put in your stores with only a limit of a certain amount of SKUs available? How do you decide what should go in there? And not to mention the unique customers. In this case, this luxury department store has around 6 million unique customers across those 52 stores, with possibilities of choosing any of the 100,000 shoe types at any of those stores at any time. So how do they do things like put the right things out on the floor to avoid stockouts, to make sure they understand the demand that's faced at each of those stores for perhaps each shoe type for every day of the year? That's the challenge. And that's really the trick here. And how is this being done today? Well, this is how it's being done today. This is it. This is Excel. This is what's being used today. And those challenges, those expectations from before can't be met using just Excel and gut instinct. And that's what we're proposing here. And why is it not enough anymore? It's like I mentioned before, markdowns are increasing, margins are shrinking. It's a lot more difficult now to meet those expectations from your customers. So there's a better way. At least we think there's a better way. We think that bringing science to the art of retail, that is blending the two sides. So talking about your gut instinct, the intuition that you've honed all these years, combined with data. And the data that you're combining, you already have, which is great. Inventory data, browse history, CRM data, transactions. This is powerful. All of these are powerful data when it's layered together and actually analyzed. So what we have here, I want to show you before we get to the demo. Mentioned this before, but Celect Assortment Optimization is based on this platform I mentioned before when we first introduced Select. So it's a cloud-based predictive analytics platform. We like to say that this is an extremely easy to use solution. And this is what you're here for today. This is what you're here to see. It's intuitive, it's interactive, and it's it's an excellent option as far as being able to solve some of those challenges that we mentioned before. To be able to give another way for retail professionals to be able to make these decisions that are outside of a spreadsheet, outside of purely using a spreadsheet, purely using gut instinct. So here's an example. So of the decisions I was talking about before, if we look at a hoodie here, so ask yourself, would your customers like this hoodie? Sure, maybe they would. But how many should you stock across your stores? What colors of that hoodie should you put in your stores? And what if we add another one into the mix? So maybe which would sell better? Another question you might ask yourself, which would sell better in your Boston store? How many should you put there to avoid a stock out? How many should you put there so you don't need to mark down too much? What if we had a third to the mix? Say in your Boston store, how would that jacket impact the sales of one or both of the others? Would it be a cannibalistic situation where it takes away from the sales of the others? Unintentionally, you may not know this, but until you have the data, until you have the algorithms that can actually expose these interactions before you commit, that money we mentioned before when we went over that 650 million, I think it was, in shoe inventory in essence. That's a lot to put out there. So understanding this stuff ahead of time is a big deal, and it's very, very important. So some more questions that we answer. We sold out of something in store 28. What should we have allocated there? If we've never sold a certain product in store 58, how well would it sell there? How do we know, right? Before we actually commit and see it succeed or fail, how do we know ahead of time? What if we're looking to add a new brand to a set of stores? What overall impact is that going to have on in-store sales? And as we kind of go through this, as Carrie goes through this demo today, these are the things you should keep in mind. Some of these questions and also this retail process that we're all very familiar with. This is basic 101 here. We all have seen this a million times, but as you go through and look at this, look at the process from plan to buy to allocate and so on, think of these questions below. These are the types of things we help in predictive analytics solutions for retailers help, is understanding if you bought the right amount, if you're planning ahead of time to buy the right amount, to purchase the right amount from a vendor, to allocate the right amount in your stores, to make sure it's at the right price. All of those things, it seems very trivial saying it like I do right now, but it's such a complex process. And right now, we think that there's really no other option out there to do this manually, and especially in a spreadsheet. It's just not possible. So we're going to show you some of this, and today's going to be taking this part of the retail process that you see, the buy and allocate part, and we're going to talk a little bit about this part of the process specifically in an example related to optimizing brands across stores. So Carrie, why don't we jump over into that? I think I've talked enough about theory, and we can actually see what's going on here. So let me flip this over to you.
All right, does that work? Can you see?
I see.
Excellent. All right, hello everybody. So in this demo, what I'm going to show you today, I'm assuming the role of a buyer or planner responsible for the Mrs. Shoes business in the North Chicago and Milwaukee region. So my goal is to optimize the brands in my stores. So are there brands I should invest more or less in, or are there brands I currently don't carry that I should? And for any given brand, how should I think about allocating those products across the stores in my region? So with that in mind, let me show you how Select Assortment Optimization can help answer those questions. So the tree map view that you see in front of you is an aggregated view of individual products across these store regions. There are various size and colored boxes. The size of the box corresponds to the size of the recommendation. So in this case, it's the total receipt value in dollars. Therefore, the larger the box, the larger the investment should be in that region. The color of the box indicates the recommended change. So blue represents an underinvestment or an opportunity to spend more, and red indicates an overinvestment. So the darker the blue, the more I should spend, and the darker the red, the more I should pull back. So if I hover over this South Chicago box, I can see that I spent $14.4 million last year, and Select recommends increasing that to $17 million. This represents an opportunity, which could mean stocking more of an existing brand or carrying a completely new brand. The box is darker blue since it represents the highest increase over last year, and this box is the largest since $17 million is the most Select recommends any region spend. So I want to filter down to the region and department that I care most about. I could use the filters at the top, or I could drill directly into the interactive tree map. So I'm going to click on my region, and I'm going to flip by department. And then I'm going to choose my department, which is the Mrs. Shoes, and I'm going to flip by brand. So now I'm focused only on the products and stores I care about. And I'm viewing this by brand. But I could really look at this by any of the attributes that matter to me, which could be color or fabric or subclass. And if I scroll down, I can see a new color on the screen, the yellow. A color of yellow indicates a new opportunity. These are products that weren't stocked in my region last year, but Select recommends that they should be. So this is great, but I'm currently looking at an unrealistic scenario where there aren't any constraints in this analysis. In reality, I may need to say something like, I can't spend more than I did last year, or no individual brand can grow more than 30%, or Calvin Klein can't grow as a brand at all. So with the solution, I can add in these constraints. So I'm going to come over here on the left here and add in a constraint which keeps my overall spend the same as last year.
Carrie, there's a quick question about, is this they're assuming this is a department store?
Yes, this is a department store which has multiple brands.
And maybe we should also clarify how this works with mono brands too at some point.
Yeah, so I mean, again, because this set of attributes that you see here in the filters and in the flip by are whatever attributes matter most to you, brand for a department store would matter a lot. But if you're a company that makes your own clothing or doesn't have brand, this could be replaced by any other attribute that matters most to you. You can basically do this analysis by any attribute. That's a great question. Okay, so I added in 0% here for my constraint, and I'm going to optimize. So what that did is it recalculated the optimization recommendations based on my ad hoc constraints here. And so analysis such as this typically would have taken days, but with this tool it's done in seconds, allowing you to experiment with different scenarios and see the impact of those on the fly. And if I scroll down here, I can still see 2 yellow boxes. So even with realistic constraints included, there's still an opportunity to introduce 2 new brands, which is great. So now I can switch over to the Details tab to look at actuals. And here I can see that even while keeping receipts flat, just around flat, there's still a potential revenue growth of 11%. And that could just be done by having a better assortment. And in the table here, I can see the recommended receipt adjustments for each brand to maximize the revenue. So in addition to viewing these recommendations by receipts, I can also view them by inventory units, if I change it up here, or by style count, which can help me understand not just the changes I should make to my receipts, but also to the breadth and depth of my assortment. So let's go back to the tree map view for 1 minute so I can show you one more thing. So here I can see that Calvin Klein is recommended to spend about the same as last year. But that doesn't mean that I should necessarily carry the same assortment or allocate that brand the same way as last year. So I want to take a closer look at how Calvin Klein should break down by store. So I'm going to drill into Calvin Klein, split by store name. But I don't want to spend more on Calvin Klein than I did last year, so I'm just going to add that as a constraint as well. And so here I can see that even though I'm spending about the same on Calvin Klein in this region, I should decrease spend in these 3 stores that are red and increase spend in the other stores that are blue. And just as before, I can also view these recommendations by inventory units or style count to gain insight into how the breadth and depth should change for each of these stores.
Of course, that could change by role, right, depending on who exactly is looking at this.
Absolutely.
A role inside of the merchandising team, or if it's someone more on the planning side, or whatever their responsibilities are, they could slice and dice or split by, in this case, of receipts, inventory, or styles, based on what interests them or answers the questions that they have.
Absolutely. If you're doing more on the financial planning, you could stick most of the receipts. If you're more on the buying side and you want to focus more on the assortment side, you can use inventory and styles. So I don't necessarily have to stop here. I can continue to explore these recommendations based on the additional filter criteria and the flip by attributes, or play with the different constraints. So as you can see, Select Assortment Optimization provides a flexible and innovative way for retailers throughout their planning, buying, and allocation process to look at their business and make decisions based on these prescriptive insights.
So can we just double back quickly?
Sure.
We don't have to spend too much time, but we do have a few extra minutes that we could look back on. One of the cooler things that I think we do, and out of all the stuff you were just talking about, looking at the colors of the boxes, specifically the yellow boxes, and how we can essentially accurately determine demand for products that haven't yet been sold in the store.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how we do this, because we're able to map, similar store, either buyer behaviors or store characteristics that can be carried over to another store, and then we're able to determine if that brand can actually sell well there. But is there any other magic to that formula? Obviously, I generalized it in a horrible way, but how can we better explain to someone sort of new to this, which I'm guessing some of the folks on the webcast are, how we actually do this? Like when we suggest when a yellow box comes up like that, and they see that, what if they look at it and they're like, well, there's no way that's gonna work there,
Right. So a lot of that is in the choice modeling that we do, which is the sort of the secret sauce of the engine. So it has a very unique way of taking very sparse data that we have across customers buying products across all these stores and relating some customers to other customers in different regions and across different stores just based on their buying behavior. And the model will say that customer A is very similar to customer B based on their buying behavior, and customer B has purchased this product somewhere else in a completely different state. And so we believe customer A would also purchase it if it was available to them. You put that at a much larger scale, obviously, but we can come up with these relationships based on the very sparse data. And then we can also do other things on top of that just to make sure that that's found. For example, one of the data sources we read in is browse. And one of the things we can use browse data for is to verify that people who are customers of that particular store have actually gone online and searched for that product. And we can confirm for ourselves, like, yes, that product actually has demand online. People are searching for it. It's not actually in that store. It should be in that store. So we can, not only does our model figure these things out, but then we can validate it, again, using a data source like browse and search, just to confirm it before we actually make that recommendation.
Strengthening, so we like to call that strengthening the signal, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things. And it's important in the omni-channel environment that when we always hear that term, but that example right there of how we take data from both sides, meaning the kind of in-store type behavioral data and the online traffic and browsing is exactly what we're talking about with omni-channel. And then also what it does is it also seems to take traditional clustering and how maybe we knew it as retailers 10 years ago and flips it around completely. And it throws out those classic demographic and financial and whatever generalized characteristics used to be used to make decisions about allocating to stores are out the window in some regard to us. And we feel that this way of understanding choices people make and the preferences they have and aligning that across stores is a lot more powerful. So I hope you found that interesting. So there's a really good question that also just came in. I think, we definitely have time for this one. So there's a question about, is this used to optimize existing assortment plans or create an assortment plan from scratch? So that's actually a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it could be either.
It's an integration with planning solution.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of people use an assortment planning system or a merchandising financial planning system. And the idea is that we would integrate with those systems. We're not intended to replace the systems. But how you use our tool along with that it's flexible enough that you could use it different ways. But we intend it to be an integration with those systems and not a replacement of. So if you, for example, create a plan in one of your systems, you could use our tool to modify some of the numbers that you would normally put in there around unit counts and style counts, and then publish that information back to your planning system. So your planning system remains the main source of information, but it would integrate with our system.
Fully closed loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Well, I think that about covers it, everyone. If there's any other questions that you might have, I would say send them to me. My email is todd, T-O-D-D, @select.com.